to the LEC studio and week 1 of summer. The excitement was through the roof going into the opening games, and as the dust settles on day 1, we are looking forward to see how things develop on day 2. My name is Sjokz and I am joined by Ender from LA and Guldborg from Berlin. It's so great to have you here. Tell us a bit where you come from, what we may expect from your analysis today.
Yeah, I'm from the NLC. I went on to the European Masters. Some saw me there for the finals, and now I'm here part of the LEC, and I'm so excited. I haven't been able to sleep all night.
Oh no! Well, we hope that works out for you. But no, you look spiffingly good, and I know that you're very well prepared. We saw that in rehearsal, so it's going to be exciting. And also, thank you so much for joining us once again.
Yeah, you got it. You know, I also wasn't able to sleep. Had to get up at 3:30 a.m. But you know what? I do it for the fans out there. And I'm really excited to have Guldborg on the show because especially with our new players, you know the ERL players better than anyone on the show. So it'll be fun to pick your brain on that one, too.
Absolutely. We're going to lean a lot on your expertise, but I know that you've also been preparing heavily and following the LEC itself heavily. So I'm super excited to hear your takes. So let's dive right in. Yesterday, the summer season started with a marquee matchup, Mad Lions versus G2 Esports. And it was the former champions who got their revenge after spring. And they're a nice game from G2. I think for the confidence of the fans, this was a great opener to the split.
Yeah, you know, it was a close game. It was a fun one to watch as well. We got to see Sjokz back on something that could have a little bit more early influence. I think he's going to be a big fan of that Xin Zhao pick as we move on in the season. And ultimately, I was impressed most by the supports in particular. I thought the way they read the map states, they were at every fight right before it was going to break out, was really, really impressive. Both supports had the highest kill participation on their two teams. So really good reads of that and a banger to start things off.
Yeah, I completely agree, especially with the map read. Like, it was just reckless against Carsey alone while the support was all over the map. And you got to talk about Mad Lions. I thought the early game they come up with was really well prepared. They're always ready for the objective before it even happened. And I think it came down to the wire, really, with Reckless finding a pick onto Carsey and actually getting them back into the game. But until that point, it wasn't really a G2 favorite game.
Yeah, and I think in the post-game interview, Jankos also said, well, if some players didn't decide that we were allowed to win this game, maybe we don't win this game. So you're saying not to panic about Mad Lions yet?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a small hiccup they had. It came down to a positional mistake, a positional error in one of the team fights. And in all honesty, it's quite easy to fix.
We'll see what happens today. Let's take a look at the standings because the overreaction can flow after day 1 because there's 5 teams at the bottom of the table, technically. Ender, what were your biggest takeaways and biggest surprises, perhaps, out of day 1?
Look, it was team vitality for me. I was excited to see what they were going to be able to show us, and they only gave up 1 kill to the team they faced down. Both Selfmade and Leader showed up, had really solid performances on the Xin Zhao and on the Viego right off the bat getting kills. And it was SLT on the Lulu that really impressed us, Guldborg.
Yeah, I completely agree because I've followed SLT for a while now in the Prime League and onto the European Masters. And the thing about this guy was he always got a lot of resources from his jungler. He was always played for. To me, SLT means Jace because that's all I've been seeing him on. But this time around, the fact that he decided to go onto a selfless style, be like, all right, I'm on the Lulu, I'm going to support you guys instead. That spoke to a lot of me about this team.
Yeah, and I think, as you rightly point out, this is a guy that's now coming into a team where he has to work in this machine of also Leader and Selfmade, who've been so hyped and have a very defined style. So I guess it speaks to his level of maturity and his willingness to adapt to the team that he goes for that Lulu pick straight off the bat.
I completely agree, because in reality, you have a triple threat team on towards Vitality. You have an opportunity for him to actually go on towards being the carry yourself. But I think that's the scary thing about Vitality. If their members are willing to be selfless and selfish when the time is right, I think it's a really scary team.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Ender, are you on the hype train of Vitality already? I mean, I am. It's early, but they look so good.
Look, I hate to overreact from day 1 and be like, everything's perfect, everything's going to look good, because there's so many more teams we need to see them play. But I will say, from this game, I felt like they came in with a really good plan, and I'm excited to see what more they have in store.
Okay, what you're saying is Vitality's going to win Worlds. Got it. Let's talk a bit about the meta. Kind of. The meta pickups that we had after day 1. We expected to see a lot of MSI-esque compositions, because even though there were some nerfs to the likes of the Leona and the Rumble, they were still very viable, and that was what happened. We did see Viego also have a high presence, which I guess is no surprise. Guldborg, what are your impressions of him? He lost some, he won.
Yeah, I still think he's a champion that's incredibly broken right now. He's like a Katarina with a better kid. You go into a team fight, you get one reset, you get onto a Fed champion, great. You have all his stats, all his items, and you could get another reset, get your own cooldowns down in the fight as well. I think he's extremely easy to pilot, it's easy to create skirmishes around, which this meta heavily revolves around as well. So to me, he is just one of the strongest picks as well.
So he works very well in the meta that we have here in EU, and I think also worldwide. And they're on the other side. Gwen, 100% banned. Does that line up with the rest of the regions?
Not quite as much. EU really doesn't like the Gwen. They want to get her completely out of here. So that was an interesting one for sure. And it makes sense, right? Like all these very flexible champions that are very strong in their own right, high agency individual picks are all going to be up there on the ban table. We see it with the Renekton getting flexed around, getting banned, the Nocturne getting banned too. All these champions fit a very similar bill.
I completely agree, and I think like the likes of Gwen, the likes of Viego, right now with these two new finally being enabled, you can only play them top, mid, and jungle. It's three roles where you just have the flexibility, and in EU, like G2 kind of got with the flex picks back in the day and inspired all of the teams really to start doing that. And I think that's one of the scary parts as well, is that you never really know where you're going to find these picks.
So you're saying it's better to just ban her out because we don't know what it's going to throw.
She's also really broken, so I think that's another part. But,
double threat, for sure. Also, we didn't have Hex Flash yesterday, also not for the rest of the weekend, by the way, due to a bug. Did we notice anything, like any teams that you would have expected to be more aggressive that weren't, or is it hard to say?
I feel like the meta really didn't change quite much. Like, I know the player made a promise not to take Hex Flash, but I mean, we still see the same kind of champions coming through here. The Nautiluses, the Leona, and I think, as I talked about, the meta right now, it's just so skirmish heavy that you need these kind of CC enables in teamfight, especially for the key carries.
Andrew?
The one small mix-up, or two of them rather, were like Hylissang going back to the flashless recon, which he's done before, but that one maybe a little bit influenced by the inability to take Hex Flash. And also Braum, we saw it picked a couple times. That champion doesn't really go for the Hex Flash normally, and that was a pick that we saw gaining a little bit more priority at MSI, but wasn't really around during the spring split. So that's one when I hope eventually we can get Hex Flash enabled. I wonder if that sticks around to the same presence like we saw yesterday.
That's a good point. We'll also see what kind of supports are picked today in the absence of Hex Flash. And let's also look at some of the individuals on the Rift. And for this, we are going to find a fitting beverage for each player A1 performance. Bear with us, you know, the Euro Cup is going on, so maybe you want to have a drink here and there, and we're here to help you, non-alcoholic, of course. So let's start with SK's 2 hours. Of course, coming in, not an enviable position in the fact that he came in for Blue, who has health issues. You're sipping water. What does that mean?
Oh, I'm just sipping water because that's the only beverage I got in front of me.
All right, so which beverage would you equate with 2 hours' first performance in the LEC?
Well, with 2 hours, I gotta go with the boba, right? So here we go. Bubble tea, you know, boba, whatever you got. 2 hours, he was this guy. It's like, I don't really know what to expect. Got subbed in the last second. I don't really know if I'm gonna like this. But then you take a sip, you get that first tapioca pearl sliding down your gullet, and you're like, oh yes, this is what we want. This is what we want to see. 2 hours was looking crisp yesterday on the Orianna.
So basically you're saying he fit in like a glove actually between the LEC mid laners, and that's pretty impressive knowing that it was a short-term solution.
Yeah, I feel like to me, 2 hours was already a prodigy when we saw him in the European Masters. He was one on Suburb Esports, which actually took a game off K-Corp, who went to win the whole European Masters in quarterfinals as well. And his control mage performance was always really reliable. When Suburb did well, it was always at the back end of him.
Wow, it was so very promising. We'll see what he does today. Next up is Promise Q. What drink would you equate with Promise Q?
Well, I feel like you take a look at the milk there and you're like, you don't really know if it's going to be good yet, and then you finally take it up, and bear in mind, it's a really hot day, you taste it, and it's just lukewarm. You just want to spit it out immediately.
Oh my God.
And that's kind of what we saw yesterday, because Promise Q, they had a really good read on the early game itself, except Promise Q didn't really respect that read. You saw they went for a split map situation where the jungler could only be bot, and he's still engaged. So there you can see the lukewarm champion himself coming in clutch.
I mean, he even handicapped himself by getting the Hex Flash that he then wasn't allowed to use, right? So, I mean, that's not easy to play. Ender?
No, it's all about the setup and everything too. Like milk works in a certain context, right? You got to get it cold, right? You got to come in prepared with the right runes. Then it's about choosing like when do you actually want the milk? It's not with the level 3 all in when your jungler's on the top side of the map. It's with cereal in the morning.
Right.
It's all about the time and the place.
Wow, day 2 of the LEC, and we're already going off the rails with our segments. Finally, though, VTO, absolutely huge opener for the Misfits on his Akali. What kind of a drink ender would you equate with his performance?
Oh, this is that ice cold, straight out of the fridge Red Bull, you know? It was a little bit slow to start, right? You know, in lane was getting pushed in, but then once he took a swig, he was online. 2 quadra kills in the team fights later on. This guy was out of his mind.
Wow, sponsor integration, flawless by Ender.
Yeah, I completely agree. If Screaming's back-to-back quadruple kill is not a Red Bull, I don't know what is. That is just perfect. That is the ice-cold sip in the warm afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. The weather has cooled down a fair bit here in Berlin. Maybe it's because everyone got chills off this Akali performance out of VTO. Absolutely fantastic. It's because you left? Okay, sure. Yeah. Anyway, VTO and the rest of France, they have had a lot to celebrate so far in 2021, and Laure is here for a look back at their success.
Thank you, Sjokz. In spring, we got to meet a bunch of new players, most of them coming from the EU Masters. But Europe is filled with an immense pool of up-and-coming talent, so we couldn't just stop there for the year. A couple weeks back, Karmine Corp established their dominance on the EU Masters scene. And with this victory, France and the LFL became the most successful region among all the IRLs. More fans than ever tuned in to attend the coronation, and they all came together to tell Europe one thing. France is strong, and French League of Legends should be feared. Except in show matches, maybe. Merci à Tréton pour ça, d'ailleurs. This summer, we got to meet 3 new players that I've had the pleasure of watching for a while now. And let me tell you one thing, these kids are hungry. And what fascinates me with the French players is how quickly they broke through the screen. We had Bebou, Jesus and VTO in spring, and wait until you see the summer promotion. SLT started as a player 2 years ago, and within 1 year in the LFL, he became one of the most noticed top laners. He's a player willing to do everything to fit his team's needs, and with that, he already is a complete player with a very big champion pool. As for Nuke, he made his debut with Karmine in the 2nd division last year, and he was quickly noticed by Schalke 04 Evolution. And when Ferkedagger had to leave and join the Thieves, who else than Nuclear could have been called to replace him? I talked to him a couple weeks back, and he knows the road will be tough, but he will do everything in his power to learn as much as he can and deliver in the LEC. As for our petit roi de la top lane, Adam, he went from the French 2nd division to joining the LEC within a year. Initially, this kid wanted to be a doctor, but he was just too good at League of Legends to miss out on a fantastic opportunity to join esports. You got to meet Adam with his signature Darius and Olaf, but Adam isn't only your typical carry player. And within 1 split with Karmine, he worked on his champion set and playstyle to quickly become a very skillful and complete player. I mean, Fnatic wanted him so much that people had to make room for him. All these players follow the footsteps of their elders, the player who made us understand that French League of Legends is something that should be taken seriously. Yellowstar, Soaz, Cabo, Ansama, all the others, all these great names gave us hope and contributed to the greatness of League of Legends in France. Took us a couple of years, but the new generation is ready to take over. Nucléaire, Adam, salut à tous. Vous vous êtes démarqué en si peu de temps, vous avez su montrer que vous aviez toute votre place au sein de la meilleure ligue d'Europe. Après la LFL, évidemment. Votre histoire, c'est ici qu'elle commence. Et vous faites partie de la nouvelle génération de players venus pour détruire l'Europe et montrer au monde ce que vous avez. Montrez-leur. La France est avec vous, la France vous regarde, les gars. And Sjokz, back to you.
Merci beaucoup et aussi bon anniversaire à toi, Laure. Très bien fait. Alors, c'est vive la France, mais j'espère pas dans le championnat européen du foot. OK, but vive la France indeed. And Guldborg, we have someone here in you that knows so much about the regional scene. And what has struck me is the rise of France as not just the LFL, the viewer numbers, the stars that come out of it, but also the stars that find their ways to the LEC. It's been phenomenal to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't quite point my finger as to why that is, specifically with the French players, but you gotta say, I can only bring you the facts about these players. Adam was an absolute monster at the European Master. He was the only player that flexed Olaf towards the top side and had huge success with it. SLT talked quite a bit about him shortly. but also a top laner, but with resources, did phenomenal. We saw him yesterday without resources, did amazing as well. And then Nuclear in. He had this saying about Sjokz and Alfea Evolution. When Schalke did good, it was because Nuclear performed. And when they didn't do good, it was because he couldn't carry.
Because he was inting. Put it that way? Okay. No jokes. Not laughing at the host. It's your first day. Laugh at my jokes. Okay, great.
I thought it was funny.
Okay. Adam and Fnatic, they started the season with an action-packed game versus Misfits yesterday. And later tonight, they clash with Mad Lions in our match of the week.
Happened before without a G2 or a Fnatic, but it's within touching distance for both these two teams.
Armand into two! It is Rogue falling down in the final moments. Mad Lions may end it right here.
Armwood Star solidifies the win. It's the nail in the coffin. The waves there. Mad Lions are going to win.
So at the start of the split, I didn't really expect to be first place for sure. But after a while, it became kind of clear that we could actually fight for the first place.
My ambition changed to a lot higher level because I see what I'm capable of now.
The Mad Lions were able to capitalize on it and get themselves a kill. Ghost now booted up. Flash forward from Kaiser. They're looking for him. Concussive blows are going to land with Glacial Fissure as well, and Ghost is down.
Looking to land it up, Ilya! What an equalizer there is. He's found the flank of the Mad Lions. Oh, looking to take down RNG. What a turnaround.
I actually am excited to face Whipple because everyone is already speculating, oh, this is going to be bad, this is going to be good. I don't think we can ever know until we see it.
Whilst Allura is not a name that makes me go like, this guy is insane individually, he's obviously very good at playing together with his team, so very respectable opponent. The most interesting about the start of the split for me this year around is that no one knows what I'm coming out with. But I expect to come out swinging because
Whipper flashes forward. Whipper going in.
I know what's up.
I personally think that Bippo is gonna be like the top jungler in the league. After Elia, of course, and Inspired. And self-made most likely.
This is heartbreaking for C9. They're so close, but they just get outplayed at every opportunity. Say it with me. Elyoya.
I think that Whipple and Hailey will for sure be dangerous because they are not scared.
Me and Hillsang are no longer in a long-distance relationship. It's me and Hilly against the world.
Last split, we were doing many things wrong, and when it came to being on the same page, we were not. I think that would be the difference between this split Fnatic and the previous one.
40 seconds into the game, but Genx, maybe he can turn it back and flash away from Hillsang. Genx trying to finish the job, but Genx, will he go down as well? It looks like it. Upset doesn't even need the lane phase to start before he starts putting kills on the board. Popo gets one, Upset gets one. Jezu, disaster for SK.
Like, it needs to happen, like, they will make it happen for sure. It's for sure gonna be something like scary. They either go, like, I think it really goes either really bad or, like, really well.
Maybe the supremacy, like, is no longer for Fnatic or G2s, and I think it's a good way for us, maybe Fnatic, to prove that we can become what we used to be, which means the best.
I don't know what to expect, but I think it's gonna be a bloodbath with a lot of fighting.
I love that final shot. He's holding it like a bazooka, I guess. Here's my trophy, and you're going to get it from my hands. And we'll see if Fnatic can put up a fight versus the LEC champions, the Mad Lions. Let's start by talking about the jungle, because I know it will be so hotly contested. Guldborg, we have Whippo, who had his first showing yesterday. Tell me what you thought about his game plan versus Misfits.
Honestly, I was quite positively surprised by Whippo's performance yesterday. It does help that a lot of the champions we've seen him pull out earlier is working in the jungle now. So obviously Rumble is a champion he's used to playing, and I think he did phenomenal yesterday. Some great equalizers, maybe even one mishap perhaps, and then out of that a great triple kill coming around the Drake as well. So I thought the early game from Whippo was actually really solid.
Sadly though, Ender, for the rest of the game, they couldn't then make it work. But do you have to then blame that on Whippo? Probably not. That's a team finding synergy.
No, definitely. I think we actually saw some of the problems a little bit that we saw from Fnatic last spring split, where the fights they chose and the actual team fight execution was a little bit lackluster. And that's an area where Mad Lions are absolutely stellar. I would also say for Whippo and any new jungler in the league this split, there are two junglers that will challenge you more than any other players in the league. And that is Inspired and Elyoya. Those two junglers are the best at working with their team in the early game. And Elyoya in particular is really good at throwing curveballs his opponent's way, at mixing up his pathing, and at surprising you in the early game. So right off the bat on day 2, Bwipo is facing one of his biggest challenges of the split.
That's going to be a tall mountain to climb for Bwipo. Yesterday, Razork said in the post-game interview, he said, well, it's sometimes hard to play versus a jungler who's only recently learned the role or started to play the role professionally, because they don't necessarily make the same decisions that lifelong junglers do. Ender, do you think this is something that Bwipo might be able to exploit, or is that not going to work versus Elyoya?
I don't think it'll work versus Elyoya. Like, I think he's definitely onto something, right? When you don't have the same experience, you're making some maybe suboptimal decisions, but Elyoya is really good at reading his opposing jungler, and he also is very good at mixing things up. So I don't think that that's going to be an advantage here for Bwipo.
It's also a certain understanding of some matchups in the jungle. Bwipo's just now gone into the jungle. You need to understand when you need to full clear, when do I need to skip camps to actually come up and contest the scuttle crab at the correct time if I play, for example, Sin Sao. So I think Elyoya is going to have that experienced advantage, where Bwipo, he might come in and be a bit cheesy at some points, but in the end, I do still think Elyoya's got the upper hand.
And we have to remember also that Elyoya has had a meteoric rise to the top and also has that experience now coming out of MSI, so I'm super excited to see how he develops. Let's also move on to the top lane just shortly. We heard there from Adam before, you know, working on making that Fnatic dynasty at the top again, but he had a rough first day yesterday on the Viego, a weak side Viego.
Yeah, I was quite surprised to see it. It was like, all right, Viego, we got this going. We're going to play for Adam. We're going to make sure he gets ahead, and we're going to do what we saw at the European Masters. But that's not quite what we saw. It was more of the fact that they started playing around these skirmishes around the bot side instead around the mid lane, and Adam was just never really facilitated. We saw some dives going on to him as well, where there really wasn't the pressure up to him to help him with these resources. And to me, that was a bit out of stylistic or out of character from Adam, because I'm so used to seeing this guy's getting these resources, not only from the jungler, but from the fact that you see mid lane will be pushed in, and then 3 members will go up towards that top lane to make sure that resources are coming into the right person.
And perhaps we'll see if there's a bit more top priority in this game with Adam within the top lane for Mad. But Mad and Fnatic, they are closing out the day. But before that, we have a very interesting matchup between Vitality and Rogue in the middle of the day. The first big test, I think, for Vitality's new lineup. And they're, hoping to see that Vitality can pull out the same stops as they did yesterday versus Schalke 04.
Yeah, I mean, that's gonna be a big challenge, because Rogue looked untouchable in their game yesterday. Absolutely no way to crack their armor. So I want to see what Vitality have for us in the early game, and if they can continue to break the game out through mid lane.
And Guldborg will also have a little breakdown of why Rogue played that game tactically so well yesterday, but that's in front of the game later. So that's the third game of the day, but the first one is a reunion for Excel's Nukeduck, who's facing his old teammates on Astralis. Let's see what he said to Laure earlier.
Thank you, Sjokz and Nukeduck. Thank you so much for joining me. First, I'm really glad to see you're back on the league. I hope your leave was everything you needed to be relaxed. We actually don't really know what happened. Can we talk about this?
I had kind of a problem where I was not able to really sleep, and I had it for quite a few months, and then it just got worse and worse towards the end, and then in the end, I told the management that I'm not able to continue playing. They need to get a substitute, and I need to kind of get out of here and just try to figure it out. And then, I went back to Norway. They got Magi Felix, and then in the end, it was not sure that I was going to be able to come back for Astralis for summer. So in the end, I agreed with Astralis better that they just leave my contract and they get Magi Felix. And things were going okay, and then Fabian reached out to me, which is our head of performance, which I've worked with before in multiple teams, and he was convinced that he could help me out, like he has helped before. So I got the confidence to already come back so early because to work with him.
Well, first, I'm sorry for everything that happened. I hope that everything is going better now. And I'm glad that Fabian's been able to help you. And it's something that would be often noticed about the Excel support staff, that they're really helpful with players. And I want to know more about what convinced you to joining them, besides Fabian being here, obviously.
So what convinced me to join them otherwise was just, for me, it was pretty simple. It was that if I wanted to play or not to play, and which league or where I would play in that case. And I prefer to play in LEC, and it was not that I could choose any team I would play for. So with this team competing in this league, as well as having the confidence to come back. Those two things were the kind of factors. And then because I didn't know much about the team, otherwise it's hard to really know for sure, even though I had some talks with them. Yeah, so there was no like red flags or anything for me with the team. I just thought, yeah, I like this, and I think I have the confidence to try this now, yeah.
That is great to hear, and I like the confidence about you, Nukeduck, and I hope that Excel can bring you everything you're looking for. Last question now. You're going to face Astralis, actually, today. We didn't get to see much of Excel yesterday, so I hope today will be like a good game for everyone. So can you tell me what can we expect from this matchup, and do you think it's going to help you to face your former team, even though you didn't play with them for so long?
What we're expecting, I think it's going to be a pretty close game.
Cool.
Things I know very well, you know, how they play and how they think. So yeah, I have a little bit of an advantage on them there. I know also how the coaches like to think about things, and I know like kind of the champions. I won't like say everything because it's a bit unfair to them, but I have some insights of how they would like to do and how they like to play. And I expect at least a more fun match than yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, you were facing off against the spring finalists. It's not an easy task, but I mean, it was a challenge. You'll get to face them again in summer. And Nukeduck, it's a pleasure to see you smile, honestly. Welcome back to the league, and good luck today against Astralis.
All right, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And Sjokz, back to you.
Thank you very much. We're all very happy to see Nukeduck back, and Guddi's found help with those issues. And hopefully he can also show off on the Rift today, as said, versus his ex-team. So let's look at that mid lane matchup. Nukeduck up versus Felix. Very interesting what he said there, Guldborg, saying, well, I know the coaching staff and I know what they usually look for. Can that help him today?
It can obviously give him an edge, but once you're locked into the Rift with two compositions, like a lot of League of Legends is still going to be very basic. If you don't have prior lanes to play for, like XL didn't have yesterday, it's not really going to come into Hellboy to any fruition. So maybe it's going to give a bit of a mental edge, help them a bit with the draft when they like to pick what. But outside of that, I still think both teams have a very good shot of taking this.
Let's talk a bit about Felix as well. Ender, he had a great opening yesterday on his Victor, and what wasn't an easy game to win. In fact, they were behind in a lot of that game. So what do you think he can show versus Nukeduck today?
Well, I'm expecting to see some more of these scaling picks. Both these teams like to take it a little bit slower, play for the later game fights. And honestly, this guy, Felix, was a bright spot for Astralis even last split, too, coming in after Nukeduck had to step down, of course. I think his Corki had a lot of really highlight moments. While the season wasn't super successful for Astralis, he had a pretty good start. So for both of these mid laners, obviously there's no malice between the teams. We heard Nukeduck talking about him exiting the team last split, but I think from community sentiment, a lot of people were kind of like, yeah, like Nukeduck was the problem, when I don't think he was in the spring split at all. He had a really good start to the season, so I think he has a lot to prove here up against the player that replaced him.
Definitely does. It's going to feel good if he can pull out the win. But as said, Astralis now with their best start that they've ever had to a split, even with Xanthar, who was waving his broken hand in front of the camera. What a showman.
Yeah, I was actually speaking to some of the staff for Astralis. You know, I'm Danish. I talked with some of the Danish guys there as well. And they were quite confident going into this week. They were like, all right, SK, it's not going to be a problem. XL, I'm sure we can do it. Matt, okay, we'll see about that one. But they were feeling themselves about this matchup as well. And you know what? I can actually see it going well for them. This is a team that stuck together for half a year now. You didn't really see too much of that synergy yesterday, but you did still see some nice, bright key moments like White Knight coming in clutch as well. And I think this is a pretty good matchup for both teams to actually prove themselves, the doubters that both teams have gathered themselves this time around.
Absolutely. Let's see what happens. Yesterday was a great start to the summer season, but the fun is just getting started as Super Week continues with XL versus Astralis. Did Wales win?